Welcome to the wild world of biosimilars, where science meets savings and big pharma meets its match. We're going to unpack the biosimilar boom, bust some myths, and maybe ruffle a few feathers along the way. We'll explore why your doctor might be side-eyeing that new biosimilar prescription, how CMOs are making these drugs faster and cheaper to get to market, and why the future of medicine might just depend on embracing these scientific sound-alikes. So whether you're a patient, a provider, or just someone who loves a good David and Goliath story, stick around. We're about to take you through the world of biosimilars, where the healthcare status quo gets a much-needed shakeup. I'm your host for Apprentice.io's Industry Insights, Frank Maggiore, and today we're diving headfirst into the contentious, game-changing realm of copycat biologics. Picture this, you're at the pharmacy, ready to pick up your life-saving arthritis medication. The pharmacist hands you a box, but wait, it's not the trusted brand name you're used to. It's a biosimilar, the pharmaceutical industry's version of generic drugs on steroids. But before you panic and call your doctor, let me tell you why this might just be the best thing to happen to your wallet and possibly the entire healthcare system. Now I know what you're thinking. Biosimilars? Sounds like a knockoff handbag design, but for my body. Well, these scientific doppelgangers are shaking up the healthcare industry faster and having a major impact on astronomical drug prices. For years, large pharma companies have been able to command premium pricing for biologic drug products, those complex, large molecule drugs such as monoclonal antibodies that have revolutionized treatment from everything from cancer to autoimmune diseases. But the party's over. Biosimilars are crashing the exclusive biologics club and not taking no for an answer. Now, I know some of you are clutching your pill bottles in horror, but are they safe? Are they effective? Will they turn me into a radioactive mutant? Spoiler alert, the answer is yes, and unfortunately, no. Sorry, you're not joining the MCU as an Avenger. But here's where it gets juicy. The US has been dragging its feet on the biosimilar bandwagon, while Europe's been living it up with these cost-cutting copycats for years. Why? Well, let's just say there's more red tape in the FDA's offices than gift wrapping at Amazon during Christmas. And don't even get me started on the patent wars. If you thought Game of Thrones had brutal storylines, you ain't seen nothing compared to the legal battles big pharma wages to keep these biosimilar upstarts off their turf. But the times, they are a-changin'. The recent launch of Humira biosimilars in the US is like the storming of the Bastille for the biosimilar revolution. Rheumatoid arthritis patients rejoice. Your wallets may finally get some relief, even if your joints don't. What exactly are biosimilars? Well, imagine your favorite biologic drug has a doppelganger, a nearly identical twin that works the same way but costs a lot less. That's essentially what a biosimilar is. It's like the generic version of a biologics drug, but way more complex. Just imagine a small molecule drug like aspirin, where the chemical active pharmaceutical ingredient, API, has only 21 atoms. The pharmaceutical manufacturing of such a drug product is the equivalent to the manufacturing and assembly of a bicycle. Not too difficult, but it's still composed of multiple steps. Now imagine a biologic molecule like a monoclonal antibody, which contains approximately 25,000 atoms. This puts the complexity of manufacturing of that molecule in a whole different league. The approximate equivalent would be the manufacturing of a private jet, with thousands of parts, hundreds of steps, and quality control checks along the way. A single person can build a bicycle, but you need an entire team working together to build a private jet, which is the equivalent narrative for a biologic like Humira. Now, before you start picturing scientists in lab coat Xeroxing molecules, let me clarify. Biosimilars aren't exact copies. They're more like cover bands. They nail the important parts of the original, but there might be some subtle differences in the background vocals if you catch my drift. But why do biosimilars matter? It's all about the money. Biologic drugs, while incredibly effective, often come with price tags that would make Jeff Bezos wince. Biosimilars swoop in like discount superheroes, offering the same treatments at a fraction of the cost. It's like finding your favorite high-end designer shoes at an outlet mall. Same strut, less strain on your wallet. Now let's take a quick stroll down memory lane. Biosimilars first strutted onto the global stage in 2006 when the European Medicines Agency, EMA, approved somatropin, a growth hormone. Europe, always the trendsetter, has been rocking biosimilars ever since. The United States, on the other hand, was fashionably late to the biosimilar party. We didn't see our first FDA-approved biosimilar until 2015. That's right, while Europe was living it up with biosimilars for almost a decade, the US was still doing the regulatory cha-cha. Why the delay, you ask? Well, creating a regulatory pathway for biosimilars in the US was about as easy as teaching a cat to swim. The Biologics Price Competition and Innovation Act finally passed in 2009, but it took another 6 years before the first biosimilar hit the market. Since then, it's been a bit of a slow burn. As of 2023, the FDA has approved over 40 biosimilars, but not all of them have made it to market. It's like they're stuck in traffic on the way to the pharmacy. Globally, the biosimilar market is booming faster than a cat video going viral. Europe leads the pack, with countries like Norway and Denmark embracing biosimilars like they're the latest Scandinavian design trend. Asia's not far behind, with countries like India and South Korea becoming biosimilar manufacturing powerhouses. But here's where things get interesting. The US, despite its late start, is catching up fast. With blockbuster biologics like Humira facing biosimilar competition, we're entering a new era of the biosimilar boom. We're going to dive into the bureaucratic quagmire that is the slow growth of the biosimilar industry in the US. It's a tale of red tape, courtroom drama, and mind over matter that would make even Carly Rae Jepsen say, that's a little too much. Let's get started with the regulatory hurdles, shall we? Getting a biosimilar approved by the FDA is about as easy as teaching a rhinoceros to tap dance. Unlike generic drugs where you can basically say, hey, our pill is the same stuff as their pill, biosimilars require a whole song and dance routine to prove they're highly similar to the reference product. The FDA, bless their hearts, requires manufacturers to jump through more hoops than a circus lion. We're talking analytical studies, animal studies, and clinical studies, oh my. And let's not forget the cherry on top, immunogenicity assessments, because nothing says fun like making sure your copycat drug doesn't turn people's immune systems into overzealous bouncers. But wait, there's even more. Even after you've proven your biosimilar is more similar to the original than identical twins separated at birth, you might still need to conduct additional studies for each condition the reference product treats. It's like applying for college, but instead of one application, you need to submit one for every single major. No wonder it takes 7 to 8 years and up to $250 million to develop a biosimilar. That's enough time and money to send a probe to Mars. Twice. Now let's say you've navigated the FDA's labyrinth and got your biosimilar approved. Time to pop the champagne, right? Not so fast, my friend. Welcome to the wonderful world of patent litigation, where the term patent thicket isn't a quaint gardening technique, but a thorny legal strategy that would make even the most caffeinated lawyer's head spin. Picture this, you're about to launch your shiny new biosimilar when suddenly you're hit with more lawsuits than a celebrity going through a messy divorce. Original manufacturers have turned patent filings into an Olympic sport, creating dense thickets of patents around their products. We're talking hundreds of patents for a single drug. It's like trying to reach the castle in Sleeping Beauty, but instead of thorns, you're hacking your way through a stack of legal documents. These patent battles can drag on for years, delaying biosimilar launches and keeping prices high. It's a legal version of whack-a-mole, where every time you think you've addressed one patent, another one pops up. No wonder biosimilar manufacturers need a legal team bigger than their R&D department. But here's the kicker. Even if you manage to navigate the regulatory maze and hack your way through the patent thicket, you still have to face the final boss, the nocebo effect. It's like the evil twin brother of the placebo effect, where negative expectations lead to negative outcomes. You see, after years of using the original biologic, some patients and physicians view biosimilars with more suspicion than a cat eyeing a cucumber. They worry that switching to a biosimilar might be like swapping out their trusty smartphone for some knockoff brand. Sure, it looks the same, but will it work as well? Will it suddenly turn into a brick mid-call? The skepticism can lead to real physical symptoms or perceived lack of efficacy, even though the biosimilar is just as effective as the original. It's like telling someone their decaf coffee is regular and watching them bounce off the walls from imaginary caffeine. Overcoming the nocebo effect requires more education for doctors and patients. Doctors need to be convinced that biosimilars are safe and effective, and they then need to convince their patients and overcoming biases that there must be something wrong with the biosimilar since it comes from a company you never heard of, it costs less than the brand name drugs that you've been taking from a company that you know and trust. It's like a giant game of scientific telephone where the message is biosimilars are just as good, we promise. The slow growth of biosimilars in the US is a perfect storm of regulatory hurdles, legal battles, and psychological barriers. It's enough to make you want to bang your head against the wall. But don't worry, there's probably a biologic for that headache as well. We're now going to move on to talking about the Elvis of biologics, the big kahuna, the king of rheumatology, the drug that's been raking in more cash than a Las Vegas casino. I give you Humira. In 2021 alone, Humira raked in nearly $21 billion in global sales. That's more than the GDP of some small countries. So when biosimilars come for the king, everyone sits up, and take notice. Now, if Humira were a person, it'd be that overachiever in high school who was captain of the basketball team, valedictorian of the school, gorgeous looking, had a storied career at Rutgers, and then went on to play professional ball in Europe. I'm not bitter, Rob Hodgson. Actually, I'm not. I'm just really proud of what you and your dad did for the community. This wonder drug has been approved to treat everything from rheumatoid arthritis to Crohn's disease, and it's been printing money faster than the Fed during a recession. But here's the kicker. Humira's reign as the undisputed monarch of the pharmaceutical world is coming to an end. As of January 2023, biosimilars have stormed the castle, and this is bigger than when the Beatles came to America. Let's break down why the entry of Humira biosimilars is such a big deal. First off, we're talking about a drug that's been the top-selling pharmaceutical product globally for years. The flood of Humira biosimilars hitting the market is like watching a dam break in slow motion. We're talking about multiple biosimilars, each vying for a piece of that sweet, sweet Humira pie. It's like the Hunger Games, but instead of teenagers fighting to the death, it's pharmaceutical companies duking it out for market share. Now let's talk impact. The entry of Humira biosimilars is expected to shake up pricing faster than a bartender making James Bond a martini. Shaken, but not stirred. We're already seeing some biosimilars priced at discounts of up to 85% compared to Humira. That's not a haircut, that's a full-on scalping of prices. This price drop isn't just good news for patients' wallets, it's potentially life-changing. Imagine being a patient who's been rationing their Humira because it costs more than their monthly rent. Suddenly, a biosimilar comes along that costs a fraction of the price. It's like finding out your favorite designer brand is now available at Walmart prices. The increased affordability could dramatically improve patient access. We're talking about patients who previously couldn't afford the treatment now having options. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Humira biosimilar invasion isn't just changing the game for this one drug. Oh no, it's the biosimilar equivalent of the shot heard round the world. It's changing perceptions for all biologic drugs. Physicians who may have been wary of biosimilars before are starting to come around. It's like they've been driving a luxury car for years, and suddenly they're test driving a knockoff that performs just as well. They're realizing that maybe, just maybe, that brand name isn't everything. We're seeing doctors becoming more comfortable prescribing biosimilars, not just for new patients, but also for patients already on Humira. It's a shift that's happening faster than a New York minute. One day they're biosimilar skeptics, the next they're biosimilar evangelists. And the patients, well, they're starting to see the light too. When faced with the choice between expensive brand name drugs and much cheaper biosimilars that their doctors say work just as well, many are making the switch. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. There's still some work to do in the perception department. Some patients hear biosimilar and think generic, which in turn makes them think less effective. It's like when you buy store brand cereal. Sure, it looks the same, but does it really taste as good as the brand name? Particularly when you have complex therapeutics dealing with personal pain and cancer care. Am I really going to trust my life and quality of life to some unknown company making a knockoff medication? This is where education comes in. Doctors, nurses, and pharmacists are on the front lines, explaining to patients that biosimilars are like high-quality cover bands for the pharma world. They might not have the same name recognition, but they can hit all the same notes. The Humira effect is also sending shockwaves through the entire biologics market. Other manufacturers of expensive biologics are watching this unfold like it's a horror movie, knowing their turn is coming. It's like watching the dominoes fall. Humira today, with everyone looking around for who's going to be next. This could potentially lead to preemptive price cuts on other biologics as manufacturers try to ward off the biosimilar invasion. It's like watching a game of chicken, but with multi-billion-dollar drugs instead of cars. The Humira biosimilar saga is a tale of price drops, increased access, and changing minds. It's like watching a revolution in slow motion, with every prescription potentially changing the course of the entire biologics market. As we watch this unfold, one thing's for sure. The biologics landscape will never be the same, and for millions of patients who've been priced out of these life-changing treatments, that might just be the best news they've heard in years. Let's go over the R&D challenges and costs. Developing a biosimilar is like trying to recreate your grandma's secret recipe, but instead of ingredients, you're dealing with complex proteins, and instead of a kitchen, you're working in a high-tech lab that costs more than a small island nation. First off, you need to reverse engineer the original biologic. This is about as easy as trying to figure out KFC's secret blend of herbs and spices, but with molecules instead. You're dealing with large, complex proteins that can be more temperamental than a cat in a bathtub. One tiny change in the manufacturing process, and suddenly your biosimilar is about as similar to the original as a Chihuahua to a Great Dane. And let's talk about the price tag. Developing a biosimilar can cost anywhere between $100 million to $300 million. That's right, for the cost of developing one biosimilar, you could buy a private island, a fleet of super yachts, and still have some change left over for a solid gold toilet. That's enough to make even Scrooge McDuck's eyes water. Now let's move on to the analytical characterization. This is where our scientist friends really earn their keep. They need to prove that their biosimilar is more similar to the reference product than identical twins separated at birth. We're talking about analyzing the product structure, function, and purity with more scrutiny than a teenager's Instagram account gets from their parents. Scientists use a dizzying array of techniques with names that sound like they belong in a sci-fi movie. Mass spectrometry, chromatography, electrophoresis. It's like a spelling bee for chemistry nerds. They're looking for everything from the protein's primary sequence to its 3D structure, making sure every atom is in the right place. It's like playing spot the difference at a molecular level. But wait, there's more. Once you've proven your biosimilar is a near-perfect mimic of the original, you still need to show it works in actual humans. Enter clinical trials, the pharmaceutical industry's equivalent of America's Got Talent, but with less Simon Cowell and more clipboards. Unlike trials for new drugs, biosimilar trials aren't trying to prove efficacy from scratch. Instead, they're more like a game of Simon Says. Can the biosimilar match the original drug's moves exactly? These trials focus on the pharmacokinetics, how the drug moves through the body, and the pharmacodynamics, what the drug does to the body. It's like following your biosimilar on a wild journey through the human body, making sure it hits all the same stops as the original. Now here's where things get really interesting. Interchangeability studies. These are the holy grail of biosimilar development, the pharmaceutical equivalent of getting a golden ticket to Willy Wonka's factory. Interchangeability is a special designation given by the FDA to allow pharmacists to substitute the biosimilar for the reference product without consulting the prescriber first. It's like being told your off-brand cereal is so similar to the brand name, you can swap them out without anybody noticing. To get this coveted status, biosimilar manufacturers need to prove that patients can be switched back and forth between the biosimilar and the reference product without any loss of efficacy or increase in side effects. It's like a high-stakes game of musical chairs but with drugs. These studies are no joke. They involve multiple switches between the biosimilar and the reference product, often over the course of a year or more. It's like a marathon for medicines, testing their stamina and consistency over the long haul. The importance of interchangeability cannot be overstated. It is the difference between a biosimilar being a niche product and becoming a true competitor to the original. With interchangeability, biosimilars can be more easily integrated into treatment regimes, potentially leading to wider adoption and bigger cost savings. The biosimilar development process is a journey of scientific detective work, molecular mimicry, and human testing that makes the average drug development process look like a walk in the park by comparison. But hey, at the end of the day, if it leads to more affordable treatments for patients, I'd say it's worth every penny and every headache. So now we're going to dive into the thrilling world of biosimilar regulations. I know, don't go anywhere. It sounds painfully boring, but trust me, this is where the real action is happening. Let's kick things off with the hot topic of Phase 3 trial requirements. Traditionally, Phase 3 clinical trials have been the gold standard for proving a drug's efficacy and safety. They're like the final boss in a video game. Big, expensive, and time-consuming. But here's the kicker. For biosimilars, some regulators are starting to wonder if these trials are even really necessary. You see, with the advances in analytical techniques, we now can characterize biologics at a molecular level with more precision than ever. This has led some regulatory bodies, like the UK's MHRA, to say, you know what? If you can prove your biosimilar is virtually identical to the reference product at a molecular level, maybe we don't need to put it through the whole Phase 3 clinical trial process. This is huge. By removing the Phase 3 clinical trial requirements, you could potentially slash development costs and time for biosimilars by up to 50%. It's like finding a warp zone in Super Mario Bros. Suddenly, you're skipping ahead and saving a ton of times and collecting tons of coins. But hold your horses, because the FDA and EMA aren't quite there yet. They're like the cautious parents of the regulatory world saying, "We'll see." However, the winds of change are blowing, and many experts believe it's only a matter of time before these agencies follow suit, at least for certain types of biosimilars. Now let's talk about interchangeability designations. This is the regulatory equivalent of getting a gold star in your homework. An interchangeable biosimilar can be substituted for the reference product at the pharmacy level without the prescriber's intervention. It's like being told your generic cola is similar to a Coke. You can swap them out without asking the soda sommelier. In the US, getting this designation requires additional studies to prove that patients can be switched back and forth between the biosimilar and the reference product without any issues. It's like a game of molecular musical chairs, and the FDA wants to make sure nobody falls on their ass when the music stops. Here's where it gets interesting. The EU doesn't have a separate interchangeability designation. They're basically saying if it's approved as a biosimilar, it's interchangeable. It's like the difference between American and European football. Same name, different rules. This divergence in approach has led to some head-scratching moments. For instance, some biosimilars that are considered interchangeable in Europe might not have that designation in the US, even though they are the exact same product. It's like being old enough to drink in one country, but not another. Same person, different rules. The significance of interchangeability cannot be overstated. It is the regulatory seal of approval that can really open up the market for a biosimilar. Without it, the biosimilar might be stuck in a second-class citizen status, always needing a special nod from the doctor before the patient can use it. Last but not least, let's touch on global regulatory harmonization efforts. This is the regulatory world's version of getting a large group of friends to agree on where to go out for dinner. It's not easy, but when it works, it's beautiful. There are ongoing efforts to assign biosimilar regulations across different countries and regions. The idea is to create more streamlined, consistent approach to biosimilar development and approval globally. It's like trying to get all the kids in the playground to play by the same rules. Organizations like the International Council for Harmonization, ICH, are working to develop global standards for biosimilar development. The dream is that one day a company could develop a biosimilar using a single global development program and then seek approval in multiple regions without having to jump through different hoops for each one. However, progress in this area is slower than a snail on tranquilizers. Different regions have different healthcare systems, different priorities, and different appetites for risk. It's like trying to choreograph a dance routine with partners using different dance styles. Everyone's moving, but not necessarily in the same direction. The evolving world of biosimilar regulations is a space that's changing quickly, with potential seismic shifts in trial requirements, ongoing debates on interchangeability, and dreams of global harmonization. One thing's for sure, in the world of biosimilar regulations, the only constant is change, and this regulatory roller coaster is just getting started. Now it's time to put on your business hats and dive into the world of the biosimilar market landscape. Trust me, it's got more drama than a soap opera and more strategy than a chess grandmaster tournament. Let's start with the key players and competitive dynamics. The biosimilar market is like a high-stakes poker game where the ante is a few $100 million and the players are some of the biggest names in pharma. We're talking about companies like Amgen, Pfizer, Novartis, Sandoz, and Biogen, all jockeying for positions at the biosimilar table. But here's where it gets interesting. It's not just the big pharma giants in this game. We've got smaller, more specialized biotech companies throwing their hats in the ring too. Companies like Coherus Biosciences and Celltrion are proving that you don't need to be a century-old pharma behemoth to play in the biosimilar sandbox. The competitive dynamics in this space are fiercer than a group of hungry seagulls fighting over a French fry. We're seeing companies form strategic alliances. For instance, Biogen and Samsung Bioepis have teamed up like Batman and Robin of biosimilars, combining Biogen's market presence with Samsung's manufacturing prowess. Now let's talk about pricing strategies and market access, because this is where things get spicier than a ghost pepper eating competition. The whole point of biosimilars is to provide cheaper alternatives to expensive biologics, right? But it's not as simple as slapping a 50% off sticker on a box and calling it a day. Biosimilar companies are playing a delicate balancing act. They need to price their products low enough to be attractive compared to the reference product, but high enough to recoup their massive development costs. It's like trying to limbo. How low can you go without falling on your ass? We're seeing a range of pricing strategies out there. Some biosimilars are launching at discounts of between 15 and 30% compared to the reference product, while others are going for broke with discounts for up to 60% or more. It's like a reverse auction where the goal is to be just cheap enough to win, but not so cheap that you end up eating ramen noodles for the next decade. And here's the kicker. Even with these discounts, biosimilars just simply aren't flying off the shelves. Why? Because market access is trickier than getting into a satisfactory conclusion of a monopoly game between siblings that doesn't end in a fistfight. Biosimilar companies need to navigate a labyrinth of formulary placements, rebate agreements, and exclusive contracts that would make Theseus throw up his hands and say, "Nah, I'll just stay in the Minotaur maze, thank you." This is where the payers and the pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, come into play. These are the gatekeepers of the drug world. deciding which medications get the red carpet treatment and which ones get left out in the cold. Payers, like insurance companies, are generally pretty jazzed about biosimilars. They see dollar signs and the potential for major cost savings. It's like Black Friday came early and everything in the biologics aisle is on sale. But, and there's always a but, payers also have existing rebate agreements with manufacturers of reference products. These rebates can be so juicy that sometimes it's actually cheaper for the payer to just stick with the more expensive reference product. It's like getting a discount on a Rolls Royce that makes it cheaper than a Toyota. Suddenly, luxury doesn't seem so out of reach. Enter the PBMs, the middlemen of the drug world. These guys negotiate prices and rebates with drug manufacturers on behalf of the insurers and employers. They're like the wheeler and dealers of the pharma world, always looking out for the best deal. PBMs have the power to make or break a biosimilar's success by deciding whether to include it in their formularies and at what tier. Get on their good side, and your biosimilar could be flying off the shelves faster than hotcakes. Get on their bad side, though, and your biosimilar could end up gathering dust in a warehouse somewhere. Womp womp. Some PBMs are going all in on biosimilars, creating specialized programs to encourage their use, while others are taking a more cautious approach, waiting to see how the market shakes out. It's like watching a group of cats decide whether or not to chase after a new toy. Some dive right in, others hang back just to observe. The biosimilar market landscape in all its complex, cutthroat glory. It's a world where science meets business, where pricing strategies can make or break a product, and where the gatekeepers hold the keys to success. One thing's for sure, in this high-stakes game of biosimilar chess, only the savviest players will come out on top. Now it's time to dive into the world of biosimilar education, because let's face it, trying to explain biosimilars to the average person is about as easy as teaching quantum physics to a goldfish. First up, let's talk about addressing common misconceptions. And oh boy, there are a lot of misconceptions. It's like a game of scientific telephone gone horribly wrong. One of the biggest myths out there is that biosimilars are somehow inferior to their reference products. It's as if people think biosimilars are the generic brand cereal to the reference product's Frosted Flakes. Sure, they both have flakes, but one's got Tony the Tiger and the other has Tony from New Jersey. In reality, biosimilars are more like the store brand Oreos of the pharma world. They might not have the fancy packaging, but the cream filling is just as sweet, and they still give you that milk dunking satisfaction that you crave. Another common misconception is that biosimilars are less safe or effective than the original biologic. This is about as accurate as thinking your doppelganger is less of a person than you are. Biosimilars go through rigorous testing to prove that they are just as safe and effective as the reference product. It's like they have to pass the same Olympic trials as the original, just to prove that they deserve to be on the team. Now let's talk about our unsung heroes in the biosimilar adoption saga, nurses and pharmacists. These folks are on the front lines dealing with patients day in, day out. They are like the special forces of healthcare, dropping knowledge bombs and dispelling myths. Nurses in particular play a crucial role. They're often the ones administering these drugs and dealing with the patient's questions and concerns. A nurse explaining biosimilars is like a translator making sense of a foreign language. They can break down complex concepts into bite-sized, digestible pieces that patients can understand and accept. You see, Mr. or Mrs. Patient, this biosimilar is like your favorite cover band. They might not have the same name recognition as the original, but they hit all the same notes and give you the same great performance. Pharmacists, on the other hand, are like the biosimilar sommelier of the healthcare world. They can explain the subtle nuances between products, discuss potential cost savings, and help patients understand why their doctor might have prescribed a biosimilar instead of a reference product. Think of it this way: if biosimilars were cars, they'd just be as safe and reliable as a high-performing brand name, but with more affordable price tags. It's like getting a luxury ride without the luxury cost. But here's the kicker. For nurses and pharmacists to be effective educators, they also need to be well educated themselves. It's like the old saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. So pharmaceutical companies and healthcare systems need to invest in comprehensive training programs for these frontline warriors. We're talking workshops, seminars, online module, the whole 9 yards. Now let's chat about the effective communication strategies to promote biosimilar acceptance. This is where we separate the smooth talkers from the tongue-tied. First and foremost, it's all about speaking the patient's language. No one wants to feel like they need a PhD in molecular biology just to understand how their medication works. Break it down, use analogies, make it relatable. If you can explain biosimilars using a pizza analogy, you're on the right track. Imagine your biologic is like a pizza from your favorite pizzeria. A biosimilar is like a pizza from another restaurant that uses the same recipe, the same ingredients, and the same cooking method. It might not have the same name on the box, but when you take a bite, you can't tell the difference. And those other brands are like Chicago pizza, which isn't real pizza, and it doesn't hold a candle to New York pizza. Sorry, I was getting carried away with the pizza analogy and the metaphors, and was just about to enter into a Jon Stewart-style rant. Another key strategy is to focus on the benefits, not just the science. Patients want to know how this affects them personally. Will it save them money? Will it be easier to access? Will it improve their quality of life? It's like selling a car. You don't focus on the engine specs, you talk about the smooth ride and great gas mileage. And let's not forget the power of patient testimonials. Nothing builds confidence like hearing from someone else who's been there, done that, got the t-shirt. It's like reading reviews before buying a product online. You want to know that real people have had real success. Lastly, it's crucial to address concerns head on. Don't shy away from tough questions. If a patient is worried about switching from a reference product to a biosimilar, acknowledge their concerns and provide clear, evidence-based reassurance. It's like being a therapist, but instead of childhood traumas, you're dealing with medication anxieties. In the world of biosimilar education, the nurses and pharmacists are the unsung heroes, where apparently pizza analogies reign supreme, and where clear communication can mean the difference between acceptance and rejection. In the world of biosimilars, knowledge isn't just power, it's the key to better health outcomes and a more sustainable healthcare system. Now it's time to grab your passports because we're about to take a whirlwind tour of the global biosimilar landscape. It's time to see how the rest of the world is handling these scientific doppelgangers and maybe pick up a few tricks along the way. Let's start by comparing biosimilar adoption rates across regions. If this were an Olympic sport, Europe would be standing on the top of the podium, gold medal gleaming, while the US would be huffing and puffing on its way to the finish line. Europe has been the Usain Bolt of biosimilar adoption, sprinting far ahead since they approved their first biosimilar way back in 2006. By comparison, the US was still tying its shoelaces, not approving its first biosimilar until 2015. In some European countries, biosimilar adoption rates are higher than a college student caffeine level during finals week. We're talking 90% or higher in some cases. Norway and Denmark in particular have been the biosimilar overachievers, with adoption rates that would make even the most ambitious pharma exec's jaw drop. Meanwhile, in the US, adoption rates have been climbing slower than a sloth on sedatives. We're seeing progress, sure, but it's more like slow and steady than fast and furious. It's like watching paint dry if the paint was really expensive and could potentially save the healthcare system billions of dollars. Now let's look at some of the best practices from countries with high biosimilar uptake. These nations aren't just winning the biosimilar race, they're lapping the competition. First up, Norway. These Vikings of the biosimilar world have implemented a national tender system that's more effective than a Norse god's hammer. The Norwegian Drug Procurement Cooperation negotiates prices for hospitals nationwide, and they're not afraid to switch everyone to a biosimilar when the price is right. It's like a nationwide game, but instead of winning a new car, you win affordable biologics. Denmark has taken a similar approach, with rapidly switching programs that would make Formula One pit crews jealous. When a cheaper biosimilar becomes available, they switch eligible patients faster than you can say "skal." It's like a nationwide biosimilar flash mob, coordinated for maximum impact. In Germany, they've implemented quotas for biosimilar prescribing. It's like having a biosimilar quota on your fishing license. You gotta catch a certain number or face the consequences. This has driven up biosimilar use faster than you can say Autobahn. The UK has taken a more carrot-based approach, offering gain share agreements where the savings from biosimilar use are split between the hospital and clinical departments. It's like telling doctors, hey, use this cheaper drug and we'll buy you a fancy new coffee machine for the break room. Suddenly, everyone's a biosimilar enthusiast. So what can the US learn from these biosimilar virtuosos? Well, quite a bit actually. First, there's the power of centralized negotiation. Imagine if Medicare could negotiate prices like Norway does. It would be like bringing a financial bazooka to a price negotiation knife fight. Then there's the importance of education and incentives. The European experience shows that when doctors and patients understand biosimilars and have reason to use them, adoption skyrockets. It's like the difference between telling someone to eat their vegetables and offering them a delicious salad with a side of cash, where they're sure to take on that green. The US could also take a page from Europe's book on regulatory flexibility. In Europe, if you've a proven biosimilar that works for one indication, you can often get approval for all the reference product's indications. It's like getting an all-access pass to a theme park instead of having to buy tickets for each ride separately. But here's the rub. The US healthcare system is more complex than a Rubik's Cube designed by MC Escher. What works in Europe might not translate directly to the American market. It's like trying to use European electrical plugs in an American socket. You're gonna need an adapter. The fragmented nature of the US healthcare market, with its mix of public and private payers, makes implementing nationwide policies trickier than a game of 3D chess. And let's not forget the litigation-happy culture that makes companies more cautious than a squirrel crossing a highway. However, there is reason for optimism. We're starting to see some US insurers and healthcare systems taking cues from their European counterparts. Some are implementing preferred drug lists for favored biosimilars, while others are offering shared savings programs that would make a UK hospital proud. So while the US might not be able to copy and paste European biosimilar strategies directly, it can certainly take inspiration from them. It's like being a cover band. You might not be able to replicate the original exactly, but you can certainly play the same tune and get the crowd dancing. The global biosimilar landscape is as varied as a box of assorted chocolates, with Europe leading the pack and the US playing catch-up. But with lessons learned from abroad and a willingness to adapt, the US biosimilar market might just go from tortoise to hare. And in this race, everybody wins, especially patients and healthcare systems in need of more affordable options. So we've talked about Humira and the legions of biosimilars now hitting the market, but that's just the opening act. The biosimilar show is about to get even bigger, bolder, and dare I say, more biologically similar than ever before. Let's start with the upcoming patent expirations. It's like watching a countdown to New Year's Eve, but instead of the ball drop, we're waiting for patient clocks to hit zero. And oh boy, do we have some blockbusters on the horizon. First up, let's talk about Keytruda. This cancer-fighting superstar has been printing money. We're talking peak annual sales of over $20 billion. The main patent is set to expire in 2028, and you can bet your bottom dollar that biosimilar companies are licking their chops, ready to take a bite out of that massive market pie. But Keytruda isn't the only big fish in the soon-to-be biosimilar sea. We got Stelara, a psoriasis and Crohn's disease treatment, which lost patent protection in 2023. Eylea, a macular degeneration drug, with a couple of biosimilars just starting to hit the market in 2024. And let's not forget about Enbrel, which has been playing patent defense like it's been in the biosimilar Super Bowl, with Erelzi, which has been approved by the FDA back in 2016, but was blocked for more than 8 years, including a denied review by the US Supreme Court in 2021. It's like watching a lineup of heavyweight champions getting ready to enter the biosimilar ring. Each of these drugs represents billions in potential savings and increased access for patients. It's enough to make a healthcare economist do a happy dance. Now let's zoom in on biosimilars and oncology, because this is where things get really interesting. Cancer drugs have been like the Fort Knox of the pharma world, extremely valuable and heavily guarded. But biosimilars are picking the locks and breaking into this high-stakes market. We've already seen biosimilar drugs like Herceptin, Avastin, and Rituxan make waves in the oncology world. But with drugs like Keytruda on the horizon, we're entering into a whole new ballgame. It's like we're moving from the minor leagues to the World Series of biosimilars. However, the path to oncology biosimilar success is not without its challenges. For one, there's the complexity of these molecules. We're not talking about the simple proteins here. They are highly sophisticated monoclonal antibodies. Copying them is like trying to replicate a Picasso with finger paints. It's theoretically possible, but oh boy, it's going to be tricky. Then there's the emotional factor. When you're dealing with cancer treatments, patients and doctors can be understandably cautious about trying something new. It's not like switching from a brand name aspirin to a generic. The stakes are much, much higher. Overcoming the psychological barrier will be crucial for biosimilar adoption in oncology. But with great challenges comes great opportunities. The potential for biosimilars to increase access to life-saving cancer treatments is enormous. Imagine a world where cutting-edge cancer therapies are as accessible as antibiotics. It's not just a pipe dream, it's the promise that biosimilars hold. Now let's talk about the potential impact on healthcare costs and patient access, because this is where the rubber really meets the road. The introduction of biosimilars has already led to significant cost savings. In Europe, where biosimilars have been around longer, we're seeing price reductions of up to 80% for some products. That's not just a discount, that's a full-on liquidation sale. In the US, while we're not quite at European levels yet, the savings are still substantial. The RAND Corporation estimated that biosimilars could reduce direct spending on biologic drugs by $54 billion from 2017 to 2026. That's billion with the B. You could buy a small country with that kind of money. But here's the real exciting part. It's not just about saving money, it's about what we can do with those savings. Lower prices mean more patients can access these treatments. It's like we're democratizing cutting-edge medicine. Imagine a world where a patient doesn't have to choose between paying their cancer treatment and paying their mortgage. A world where a doctor doesn't have to hesitate before prescribing the best available treatment because of cost concern. That's the world that biosimilars are helping to create. And it's not just individual patients who benefit. The savings generated by biosimilars can be reinvested into healthcare systems. Maybe that means more funding for nurses, or investing in new medical technologies, or even developing the next groundbreaking treatment. It's like biosimilars are not just saving money, they're paying it forward. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The future of biosimilars, while bright, is not without its challenges. We still need to overcome regulatory hurdles, patent thickets that make a briar patch look like a walk in the park, and the ever-present challenge of winning hearts and minds. Education will be key. We need doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and patients to understand that biosimilars aren't the generic brand cereal of the biologics world. They're more like artisanal small batch versions of your favorite craft beer, carefully made, rigorously tested, and every bit as good as the original. We also need smart policies that encourage biosimilar development and adoption. This could mean streamlined approval processes, incentives for prescribers and patients, or even good old-fashioned public awareness campaigns. It's like we need a biosimilar PR team spreading the good word about these money-saving, access-increasing wonder drugs. The future of biosimilars is bright, busy, and full of billion-dollar opportunities. From oncology to immunology and beyond, biosimilars are set to reshape the healthcare landscape. They're not just drugs, they're potential game changers in our quest for more affordable, accessible healthcare. As we look beyond Humira, we're not just seeing a few drugs on the horizon, we're seeing a potential revolution in how we develop, approve, and use biologic medications. Now we can roll up our sleeves and dive into the nitty-gritty world of biosimilar manufacturing. Let's start with the manufacturing challenges of complex biologic biosimilars. Imagine trying to replicate your grandmother's secret recipe, but instead of ingredients, you're dealing with living cells, and instead of a kitchen, you're working in a high-tech facility. That's biosimilar manufacturing in a nutshell. These aren't run-of-the-mill small molecule drugs that you can whip up in a chemistry lab. We're talking about large, complex proteins produced by living organisms. It's like trying to herd cats, but the cats are microscopic and incredibly finicky about their living conditions. The challenge starts when selecting the right cell line. It's like casting for a Hollywood blockbuster, but instead of actors, you're auditioning cells. You need to find cells that can produce your protein consistently and in high quantities. It's like finding a unicorn that's also laying golden eggs. Then there's the growth medium, the cell's 5-star hotel. Get the conditions wrong and your cells will check out faster than a rock star trashed in a hotel room. Worse than Goldilocks, if any of the conditions in manufacturing are too hot, too cold, too acidic, not enough nutrients, any of these can send your production into a tailspin. And let's not forget about purification. Once your cells have produced the protein, you need to extract and purify it. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, except the needle is your protein and the haystack is a soup of cellular debris and other proteins. Fun times. But wait, there's even more. Even if you manage to produce a protein that looks identical to the reference product on paper, tiny differences in the manufacturing process can lead to changes to the final product. It's like baking a cake. Follow the recipe exactly, and you still might end up with a slightly different result each time. This is where contract manufacturing organizations, or CMOs, come in, riding to the rescue like knights in shining cleanroom suits. CMOs are the Swiss Army knives of the pharma world. They got the facilities, they got the expertise, and the flexibility to tackle these manufacturing challenges head on. Using a CMO is like hiring a seasoned chef to cook your grandmother's secret recipe for you. They got the equipment, they got the know-how, and they've probably seen it all before. Plus, it saves you from having to build a state-of-the-art kitchen just to make one dish. For biosimilar companies, especially smaller ones or those just dipping their toes into the biosimilar pool for the first time, CMOs are a godsend. They allow companies to develop and produce biosimilars without investing in the expensive manufacturing facilities. It's like renting a Ferrari instead of buying one. You get all the performance without the long-term commitment. Let's take the example of Hadlima, a biosimilar to the blockbuster drug Humira. Organon, the company behind Hadlima, teamed up with Samsung Biologics, a CMO, to manufacture this complex monoclonal antibody. Samsung Biologics isn't just any CMO. They're like the Apple of biologics manufacturing. They got cutting-edge mega facilities that would make a NASA engineer whistle in appreciation. By partnering with Samsung, Organon got access to top-notch manufacturing capabilities without having to build their own facilities from scratch. This partnership is like a match made in biosimilar heaven. Organon brings the know-how in drug development and commercialization, while Samsung Biologics brings the manufacturing muscle. It's like pairing a master chef with a state-of-the-art kitchen. The results are bound to be impressive. The use of CMOs like Samsung Biologics isn't just about avoiding the headache of building your own facilities. It's a strategic move that can significantly reduce risks and keep costs down. Here's how. First, it allows companies to be nimble. In the fast-paced world of biosimilars, where being first to market can make or break a product, the ability to quickly scale up production is crucial. CMOs can provide that flexibility. Second, it spreads risk. Developing a biosimilar is already a high-stakes game. By outsourcing manufacturing, companies can avoid putting all their eggs in one very expensive basket. It's like diversifying your investment portfolio, but instead of stocks and bonds, you're dealing with cell cultures and bioreactors. Third, it taps into specialized expertise. CMOs live and breathe biologic manufacturing. They've seen it all, done it all, and have the t-shirt to prove it. This expertise can be invaluable in navigating the complex world of biosimilar production. Lastly, it can lead to significant cost savings. Building and maintaining a biologics manufacturing facility is about as cheap as buying a small island in the Caribbean. By using a CMO, companies can avoid these massive upfront costs and pay for that capacity as they need it. It's like using Uber instead of buying a fleet of cars. But let's not paint CMOs as a magic bullet. Like any outsourcing relationship, it comes with its own challenges. Communication needs to be tighter than a drum, quality control needs to be more rigorous than a drill sergeant, and contracts need to be more detailed than a teenager's social media feed. In conclusion, the manufacturing of biosimilars is a complex dance of science, technology, and business strategy. CMOs like Samsung Biologics, Catalent, Thermo Fisher, and Lonza are playing an increasingly crucial role in this dance, allowing companies to salsa their way into the biosimilar market without tripping over their own feet. As the biosimilar market continues to grow, we're likely to see even more innovative partnerships between drug developers and CMOs. It's a trend that could help bring more biosimilars to market faster and potentially lower costs. And in the end, it's good news for everyone, from the companies developing these drugs to the patients who need them. So the next time you hear about a biosimilar hitting the market, spare a thought for the complex manufacturing processes behind it. And maybe, just maybe, raise a toast to those unsung heroes in those clean rooms, working tirelessly to bring these life-changing drugs to the patients around the world. They might not wear capes, but in the world of biosimilars, they're definitely superheroes. They wear clean room outfits anyway. Now it's time to fire up that flux capacitor and zoom into the future of biologics and biosimilars. We're talking cutting-edge science that would make even Doc Brown's head spin. Let's kick things off with emerging therapeutic areas for biosimilars. Now that we've seen biosimilars make a big splash in areas like rheumatology, oncology, and diabetes, but hold on to your lab coats because biosimilars are boldly going where no biosimilars have gone before. One exciting frontier is neurology. We're seeing developments of biosimilars for multiple sclerosis treatments like Tysabri. Imagine biosimilars fighting MS like tiny, affordable superheroes in your nervous system. It's like the Avengers, but microscopic and with fewer explosions. Ophthalmology is another area where biosimilars are setting their sights. With biosimilars for macular degeneration treatments on the horizon, we might soon have more affordable options to help grandma read her favorite gossip magazines. It's like giving everyone's eyes a budget-friendly upgrade. But here's where it gets really wild. Biosimilars are even venturing into the world of fertility treatments. That's right, biosimilars might soon be helping to make babies. Now let's talk about the impact of new biologic modalities, because this is where science fiction starts to become science fact. We're talking cell and gene therapies. These aren't your grandmother's biologics. These are the cool, edgy cousins that show up to your family reunion with a mohawk and a pet iguana. Cell therapies like CAR-T are already making waves in cancer treatment. It's like reprogramming your immune system cells to become cancer-fighting ninjas. And gene therapies, they're like editing the typos in your genetic code. Got a faulty gene? Just CRISPR it out. But here's the million-dollar question, often literally given the price tags of each of these treatments. What does this mean for biosimilars? Well, it's complicated, like trying to explain TikTok to your grandparents. On the one hand, these new modalities are so complex, creating biosimilars for them is about as easy as nailing jelly to a wall. We're not just copying a protein here, we're talking about replicating entire cellular processes. On the other hand, the high cost of these therapies practically begs for more affordable alternatives. When a single treatment can cost upwards of $1 million, suddenly the idea of a biosimilar cell therapy doesn't seem so far-fetched. It's like the biosimilar industry looking at these price tags saying, "Hold my beaker." We're already seeing companies explore the idea of biobetters for cell and gene therapies. Imagine CAR T cells that are not just copied but enhanced. It's like upgrading from economy to business class, but for your cancer treatment. Speaking of biobetters, let's dive into this fascinating category. Biobetters are like biosimilars that went to the gym, got a makeover, and came back with superpowers. They're similar to the original biologic, but with improvements in areas like efficacy, safety, or convenience. Picture this, a biologic that used to require weekly injections reimagined as a monthly dose, or with fewer treatment side effects, or one that doesn't need to be refrigerated. It's like taking your favorite smartphone and adding a better battery life, a superior camera, and the ability to make a perfect cup of coffee in the morning. The potential for biobetters is huge. They offer a way for companies to differentiate themselves in an increasingly crowded biosimilar market. It's like showing up to a party where everyone's wearing the same outfit, but you've accessorized with a jetpack and a Boston Dynamics personalized robot. But biobetters also raise some interesting questions. Are they different enough to warrant their own patents? How will they be regulated? Will payers be willing to cover them if cheaper biosimilars are available? It's like opening a can of biologic worms, except the worms have been genetically enhanced and now want to discuss intellectual property law with you. Despite these challenges, the future for biobetters look bright. They offer a middle ground between innovative new biologics and straight-up biosimilars. It's like finding the Goldilocks zone of drug development. Not too original, not too similar, but just right. As we look to the future, one thing is clear. The line between biologics and biosimilars is getting blurrier than a photo taken by your aunt who doesn't understand smartphone cameras. We're entering an era where similar doesn't just mean copy, but could mean enhanced, upgraded, or even reimagined. The biosimilar market of tomorrow might include everything from near-exact copies of existing drugs to enhanced cell therapies that make the originals look like flip phones in the iPhone world. It's a future where patients have not just one alternative to expensive biologics, but a whole menu of options tailored to their specific needs and preferences. But with this explosion of options comes challenges. How will regulators keep up? How will doctors and patients navigate this more complex landscape? And how on earth will anyone be able to remember all these drug names? It's like trying to keep track of all the characters of Game of Thrones, but with more syllables and fewer dragons. The future of biologics and biosimilars is anything but boring. We're on the cusp of a new era in medicine, where the boundary of what's possible are being pushed further every day. It's an exciting time to be alive, especially if you're a fan of really long, complicated drug names. So whether it's biosimilars venturing into new therapeutic areas, mind-bending new modalities in cell and gene therapy, or biobetters that make you wonder why we ever settled for the original, the future is looking brighter than fluorescent proteins under UV lights. So we've been on quite a journey through the wild world of biosimilars. It's time to land this biological spacecraft and recap our adventure exploring the transformative potential of biosimilars. Let's start with that quick recap. We've covered more ground than a marathon runner on espresso, but here are the key points. First, we learned that biosimilars are like the cover bands of the pharma world. They might not have the same name recognition, but they can hit all the same notes as the original biologics, often at a fraction of the cost. We've explored the rocky road of biosimilar development in the US, complete with regulatory hurdles higher than an Olympic high jump and patent thickets thornier than a rose bush in full bloom. We witnessed the Humira effect, where a flood of biosimilars is shaking up the market faster than a bartender mixing cocktails at happy hour. We took a globe-trotting tour seeing how Europe is teaching a masterclass in biosimilar adoption, while the US is still in biosimilar kindergarten. And we peered into the crystal ball of future biologics, where cell therapies, gene editing, and biobetters are also pushing the boundaries of science faster than you can say CRISPR. But here's the real multi-billion-dollar question. What's the real impact of this biosimilar buzz? It all comes down to two magic words: accessibility and affordability. Biosimilars are like the Robin Hood in the pharma forest, taking from the rich organizations and giving to the poor patients. They're democratizing access to cutting-edge biological treatments. Imagine a world where life-saving cancer treatments don't come with the side effect of bankruptcy. A world where patients don't have to choose between paying for their arthritis medicine or their mortgage. That's the world biosimilars are helping to create. But it's not just about individual patients. The savings generated by biosimilars can be reinvested into healthcare systems. We're talking about the potential for more nurses, better facilities, and increased research funding. It's like biosimilars are the gift that keeps on giving to the entire healthcare ecosystem. However, this biosimilar utopia isn't going to build itself. It's going to take effort from every stakeholder in the healthcare conga line. So here's my call to action. To the regulators, keep streamlining those approval processes. We need a biosimilar fast lane that's smoother than a freshly waxed bowling alley. To the policymakers, create incentives for biosimilar development and adoption. To the physicians, educate yourselves about biosimilars. They're not the generic brand cereal of the biologic world. They are the artisanal, small batch versions of your favorite craft beer. To the patients, don't fear the biosimilar. Embrace these wallet-friendly alternatives like a long-lost relative who wants to pay off your student loans. To the pharma companies, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with biologics and biosimilars. We need innovation that's faster in bringing products to market, increases accessibility, and reduce cost overall. To the payers, recognize the long-term value of biosimilars. They're not just cost-saving measures, they're an investment in a healthier, more accessible future. And to the nurses and pharmacists on the front lines, you're the biosimilar ambassadors, the educators, the mythbusters. Continue spreading the good word about biosimilars. In conclusion, biosimilars aren't just another type of drug, they're a revolution in a vial. They represent a future where cutting-edge biological treatments are not a luxury for the few, but a standard of care for the many. The road ahead may be bumpy, but the destination is worth it. A healthcare system that's more affordable, more accessible, and more equitable to all. That's a future worth fighting for. So let's embrace the biosimilar revolution. Let's work together to overcome the challenges, seize the opportunities, and create a health landscape that's equitable for all. Because at the end of the day, biosimilars aren't just about similar molecules. They're about hope. Hope for patients, hope for the healthcare systems, hope for a future where everyone can access the treatments that they need. And that, my friends, is truly transformational. In an industry where precision and compliance are paramount, Apprentice's Tempo platform offers a cutting-edge manufacturing execution system solution. It's cloud-based, mobile-first, operator-centric, with the most intuitive UI in the industry, making it perfect for today's dynamic pharmaceutical manufacturing environments and for the production of the world's most complex drug products. Whether you're working on groundbreaking cell and gene therapies, biologics, or small molecules, Tempo provides a fully validated MES system that's both powerful and easy to use. It streamlines your processes, ensures compliance, and adapts to your specific manufacturing needs. So get off of paper batch records and discover how Apprentice's Tempo Manufacturing Cloud can transform your operations by visiting us at apprentice.io. Attention industry professionals, revolutionize your manufacturing process with the Apprentice Tempo Manufacturing Cloud, a manufacturing execution system built to streamline your operations, boost efficiency, and ensure compliance all in one powerful platform. Experience the future of manufacturing with our free 30-day trial. Scan the QR code on your screen now to unlock a world of innovation. Don't just keep pace, set the tempo as an industry leader with Apprentice. That's all for Apprentice.io's Industry Insights. I'm Frank Maggiore. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for notifications when new episodes drop. Please comment on if you have any additional topics you would like for me to cover in this space, and we'll see you next week for more Industry Insights.